Hey guys, this is Charles Yeager with PremiumBeat.com. In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to export icons from Adobe Illustrator to use in Premiere Pro and After Effects. So quite often I use vector icons from Shutterstock in my projects, and if you're not very familiar with Adobe Illustrator, it can be a bit of a hassle dealing with those icons in Premiere Pro and After Effects if they haven't been prepared properly. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how we can isolate an icon from a set of icons in Illustrator, and then my methods for exporting that icon to be used in Premiere Pro or After Effects. I'll show you a few more basic tips like changing colors, resizing, and separating an icon into layers that can then be animated in After Effects. Okay, so I'm going to start here on Shutterstock, and here's a group of vector icons that I'm going to use in this tutorial, and you can see it's a whole set of icons, and I really just want to use one or two of these. And so let's go ahead and now jump over into Illustrator and see how we would isolate that icon. All right, inside of Adobe Illustrator, I'm gonna go ahead and open up that vector set of files that I downloaded from Shutterstock. So I'm just gonna locate that file. So come over here to File and then Open. And I'm just gonna select that set of VR icons and click Open. So typically this is what it's gonna look like when you open up a set of icons in Illustrator. You can see we have access to all the different icons, and a lot of times when you select them, in this case, each of the icons is individual, but sometimes when you select them, it'll select the entire group. And you can think of this like nesting layers or compositions in After Effects. We need to dive inside of each of these groups. We can select the actual icon that we want to use. So the first thing we need to do is open up the layer panel. So I'm gonna come over here to Window, and I'm gonna select the Layers panel. And that's going to be this floating dock here, and we can see basically all the groups and how everything kind of is connected to each other. Now what I'm actually going to do here first, I'm going to come over here to the preferences of the layers panel, and I'm going to select panel options. And I want to make these icons be a little bit bigger over here in the layers panel, that way we can see this and it'll be a lot easier to see in the tutorial as well. So I'm coming down here to row size, and I'm going to select other, and I'm going to type in 70 and click OK. And again, it just resizes these so we can see them a little bit larger. So if we look at what's actually composed right now of this set, we can see we have our icons as one layer, and then we have a background here, and the background is white. If we go ahead and turn it on and off, we're not going to notice any change, and that's because the background natively in Illustrator is also white. But I'm going to go ahead and delete this background here just so I don't accidentally export that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this circle here, and that's going to target that specific layer. So you can see how it's highlighted in green here, and we can see this little color box right next to that target when we select it. So I'm going to come down here to the trash can and just delete that. So now we have our set of icons, and I can toggle this down, and we can see that this composes of each of those individual icons. Now one thing I do want to mention very quickly, if for whatever reason you can't move an icon around, it might be locked, and you can see if I click here, it's going to create this little lock symbol. So just go ahead and click on that lock symbol to turn that off. Usually it's off by default, but just in case that was on when you opened up your Illustrator file. Now the icon I want to select is actually this camera with the arrow, the 360 arrow going around it. I'm going to scroll down here in this group, and I'm going to locate that icon, and there it is right there. So I can go ahead and select it here. You can see I'm going to target that, and you can see it's going to make that color box appear. We can see it has now been selected. And so now if I want to, I could actually move this around. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. But I could also toggle this down, and we can see everything that consists of this group. You can see all the layers that make up that camera icon. So now that we've located which Illustrator icon that we want to export, I'm going to go ahead and add that to its own document. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to File, and I want to select New. And it's going to allow us to create our own new document to place that icon on. Now the settings that I typically use is just a 1000 by 1000 pixel size document. Now you can feel free to set this to whatever you want it to be, 1920 by 1080, but it's important to note that in After Effects we can go ahead and resize any of these vector icons without losing any quality. However, in Premiere Pro, Premiere is going to treat a vector icon much like a PNG image, so it'll still have an alpha channel, but when we resize it over 100%, there will be quality loss. So it's a good idea if you're creating this icon to use in Premiere Pro, go ahead and set it at the size that you're going to want that icon to be, or even bigger, because you can always scale it down without losing quality. But again, just for this tutorial, I'm going to set the width to be 1000 and the height to be 1000. I find that's a good starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create. So now we can see that's went ahead and created that new document. So now let's go back to our original set of VR icons. So what I want to do now is I want to make sure that that camera icon has been selected. So I'm going to target it. I can go ahead and close up the group there. As long as it's selected and we can see that it's been selected here with the highlights, I'm going to come up here and go to Edit and then Copy. Then I'll go back to my new document over here, and I'm going to select Edit and then Paste. Then I'll paste that right in the center of our new document. And we can see it over here on the Layers panel. Now I'm going to go ahead and resize the display size of the layers panel here on this new document. So I'm just going to select that, go to panel options, and change the row size again to be 70, again, just so we can see this better for the tutorial, and click OK. Now you can see as it's selected, and you can see it's highlighted with the blue kind of trim there, highlighting that we have selected it. If I go around the corners here, you see I have a few options such as rotate. I can rotate the icon. I'm gonna hit Control Z to undo that. But the other one, when I have the dual arrows, I can actually click and hold, and it's gonna resize it. Now you can see it's not holding scale. So I wanna hold the Shift key while I have that selected, and you can see now it's gonna uniformly scale it up. So I'm just gonna go all the way up here to the corners and release. And then I'm just gonna scroll back down here. I'll move this over just so we can see a little bit easier. I'm gonna select the bottom corner and stretch it down as well while holding the Shift key, just to resize that. So I'll just come back up here so we can see this. Now that we've got it resized, it's gonna be a good idea for us to align this into the center of our document. That way when we open it in Premiere and After Effects, it'll already be centered up. So with everything selected again over here, I'm just gonna come here to the top, and you're gonna see the alignment tools, and I'm gonna select horizontal align, and it's gonna align it horizontally, and then I'm gonna select the vertical align, and that'll just ensure again that everything is centered up in our document. So now that we have this icon isolated, let's say I want to change the color of some of the properties like the lens and the arrow here. So what I can do is I'm going to toggle down this layer, and you can see we have this icon in a group below that. So I'm just going to toggle that down again as well. So now we can see all the individual pieces that make up this icon. So I'm actually going to select the arrow. So I'll just target that over here, and you can see it's going to isolate that. So now that it's the only thing selected, and I can just come over here to the fill, and I'm going to double click in the fill area here. This is going to allow me to change the color of any part of this icon. So I'm going to make this be orange and click OK. Now that changes that arrow to be orange. You can also change the color of the lens. So I'm going to come here to the lens element. I'm going to click on that and come over here to the fill and double click. And I'll just change the color of that lens element. And again, I could change the color of any of these other layers that I want to select that's in this group of this icon. So now I'm just going to go ahead and deselect that lens element just by clicking in the gray area over here. So if you're going to export your icon to use in Premiere Pro, again, it's going to work much like a PNG image. It's going to rasterize the icon right upon import. And so I'll go ahead and just show you what that's like now if I wanted to export this. So I'm going to come over here to File. I'm going to come down to Save, and I can just go ahead and name this icon. So I'm going to call this Camera Icon, and then I'm going to name it PR for Premiere Pro, and click Save. And that'll pop up the Illustrator options, and I'm gonna go ahead and leave all these on default and just click OK. So now let's go ahead and jump over to Premiere Pro. All right, inside of Premiere, I've got a project already opened up. I'm just gonna double click in the project panel. And I'm gonna locate that icon we just exported. So there's our camera icon for Premiere, and click Open. Now I'm just gonna select that icon and just drag it into my sequence. And now we can see there is our camera icon, and I can select it. And you can see it's imported at the 1000 by 1000 resolution size that we exported from Illustrator. And we have some other options over here with it selected. We can come to the effects controls, and we can rescale this camera icon, and we can move it around, and you can see the background is transparent. Now again, I'm gonna come down here to view it at 100%. You can see if I do scale it above 100%, you're gonna see we do have a little bit of pixelization occurring around the edges. And again, that's because it is being scaled over 100%. And that is one of the drawbacks of using these icons in Premiere, is that you can't overscale them. But again, if you need to, just export it at a higher resolution, and then you can always scale it down and you won't have any quality loss. All right, let's jump back over to Illustrator and look at the options for After Effects. All right, back inside of Adobe Illustrator, one cool thing about using vector icons in After Effects is they're going to continuously rasterize, so they're going to work much like a vector does in Adobe Illustrator. Essentially, we can rescale them, we can scale them up really high, we won't lose any quality. Something else we can do though is we can actually import individual layers from our icon that we can then animate. So let's say I wanted to isolate this arrow, maybe have it spin in or have the lens kind of scale up and pop in. We can separate out these layers here in Illustrator so that in After Effects it will recognize each one of those separately. And this is really easy to do in Illustrator. You can see we have our initial layer 1 here that has our entire camera icons and all the elements of it on it. So I'm just going to come down here, you're going to see a little notepad symbol. I'm going to select that, and that's going to create a whole new layer. So I'm going to toggle this back open again. And let's say I wanted to add the arrow on its own layer. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to target the arrow. You can see when I have it selected. I'm just going to click and hold and just drop it on that new layer that we created. And now you can see the arrow has been dropped on layer 2, and I can actually turn it on and off by itself. So let's go ahead and create another layer for the lens elements. So I'm just going to select this notepad down here to create a new layer. And I'm going to select the first part of the lens element. I'll target it, click and hold, and just drop it on there. then I'll come down here for the outer rim of the lens element. I'll target that and just click and hold and drop it again on layer 3. And you can see both of those have now been layered together. So I'm just going to close up here for the camera body icon there. So now we can actually rename each of these elements, and they will be named properly when we import them into After Effects. So I'm just going to double click on layer 1, and I'll just call this camera. Now I'll double click on layer 2 and just call this arrow. And the same thing for layer 3, I'll just call this lens. So now we can go ahead and export this to use in After Effects. So I'll just come up here again to File, and I'm going to click Save As. And I'm just going to name this icon Camera Icon, and I'm just going to change the end of this AE for After Effects and click Save. And again, we can leave all the Illustrator options as default and go ahead and click OK. So now let's go ahead and jump into After Effects. Alright, so inside of After Effects, I'm just going to double click in the project panel so we can import in our icon. And that'll bring up the import window, and I'm just going to select the camera icon AE that we just exported and select Import. Now when you import Illustrator files into After Effects, you get a few different options such as import kind as composition or footage. I'm going to leave it on the default, which is composition. And then for footage dimensions, the default is layer size. I'm also going to leave that as the default. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And now we can come over here and we can see what After Effects has done. It's created a new composition. I'll double click on that, which has our camera icon in it. And you can see it has each of those layers that we exported from Illustrator. So we have the lens, the arrow, and the camera, and they're all separated, so I can actually turn each individual element on and off if I want to, or I could apply different scale properties. I'm going to go ahead and hit S on the keyboard with the lens. I could animate the lens kind of popping in and stuff like that. Or if I wanted to, I could actually make it 3D, and I could actually rotate it, and just have a lot more options here in After Effects when you're working with Illustrator files. But something else After Effects did when we imported that Illustrator file in, it created a folder with the same name as our file, and it adds layers to the end of it, and we can open this up, and that contains each of those individual elements that was a part of our Illustrator file. So I'm just going to close that back up. So now I'm going to go back over here to my main composition, and I'm going to drag in that icon that we imported. And again, you can see it's on a transparent background, but I'm actually going to go ahead and scale this up. So I'm going to hit S on the keyboard, and I'm going to scale it up over 100%. And if we zoom in here and look at this, you're going to see we're still getting some pixelization here on the edge of our logo. However, there's a way we can get rid of that. So I'm going to go back over to our camera icon composition. And what we need to do is we need to come down here. You're going to see this little like icon. It looks like a sun. You can see when I highlight that with my mouse, it says for comp layers, collapse transformations. For vector layer, it's going to continuously rasterize, which means it's basically going to act just like a normal vector layer does in Illustrator, however in After Effects. So I'm just going to go ahead and select to turn on collapse transformations for each of these layers. And you're going to see a little sun icon kind of appears on each one of those. So let's go back to the main comp. And you can still see that this still looks pixelated, so it doesn't look correct just yet. However, on that composition with our icon, I'm also going to turn on collapse transformations. So I'll just click that on, and right when I do, you're going to notice now we get very sharp edges on this icon. And we can actually scale this up and down without any quality loss. You can see I can scale it up really high. We're at 800%. And you can see the edges here are still tack sharp. And so again, that's one of the other cool properties about using vector icons in After Effects. Alright guys, hopefully you learned some tips working with vector icons in Adobe Illustrator and how you can export them into After Effects and Premiere Pro. Make sure you guys check out the PremiumBeat blog. Every weekday they're posting lots of filmmaking content and new tutorials just like this one, and they have lots of freebies on there that you can download as well. This has been Charles Yeager for PremiumBeat.com. Thanks for watching.